This is a Chinese-made Tesla Model 3 that I've had for 3 years and driven 80,000 kilometers. It has been on adventures, service centers, and everything in between. Today, I'm going to go through everything about the ownership of this car, because I'm getting rid of it. Also, stay tuned to the end, because I have a small competition announcement there. This car was built at the Tesla Gigafactory in Shanghai, China, in the summer of 2021, and I took delivery shortly after. It has all-wheel drive, it has a LG long-range battery with NCM chemistry, it is a 75 kWh gross capacity battery, it has, the car has midnight silver metallic paint, no tow hitch, and a black interior, like you can see here. And all of these are choices that I regret when I made the purchase of this vehicle. I will come back to that later in the video. I paid 470,000 Norwegian kroners for this vehicle, everything included, taxes, winter wheels, everything, and that's about 43,000 US dollars. In this video, I'll talk about the build quality and interior. I'm going to talk about rattles and squeaks, ride and comfort, driving, technology, the sound system, my service visits, cost of ownership, depreciation, how much did I lose on this car? You always lose on new cars. I'm going to talk about degradation of the battery, how much real-world range have we actually lost? I'm going to talk about charging performance of this subpar LG battery. I'm going to talk about efficiency and what is the lifetime efficiency and real-world range of the car after all these years. I'm going to talk about adventures I've been on with this car. I'm going to talk about winter driving performance. I'm going to talk about the features that surprised me, regrets, and conclusion with a little hint on my replacement vehicle.
Do you store harpoons or other sharp objects in your Tesla? Check the link below.
First of all, let's talk about the elephant in the room, and that's build quality. And it's the elephant in the room for Teslas, because they have had issues with build quality for a very long time. So let's start with the interior. First of all, this is a massive step up from the first iteration of the Model 3. If you have driven the pre-2021 model, this one is nothing like it. It has double pane windows, different sound deadening strategies that all contribute to a more comfortable ride. For me, this was almost as big as a refresh as the new Highland over the previous Model 3, but maybe that's just a stark difference between US and Chinese built cars, because every car pre-2021, every Tesla Model 3 pre-2021 in Norway came from the US, so it was a big step up in quality. The interior feels pretty nice. There are some hard plastics, and I personally do not like the wood trim. It looks cheap. The fake leather feels nice, and nicer than many leather interiors in other cars. Not everyone, of course. There are some Nappa leathers that feel fantastic, but Tesla has really perfected the compound of this fake leather. The steering wheel is clean and matte after all these years. However, it was replaced recently, and I'll come back to that very soon in the service section of this video. The interior has held up remarkably well for 80,000 kilometers, but there are of course a few things that I will talk about once we get over to the service visit section of this video. I've had no real problems with squeaks and rattles in the interior of my Tesla Model 3, which I'm very happy with, because I've heard a lot of other people that have had those issues. Let's move over to the exterior. Exterior has been problematic for Teslas in Norway because of the rough winter conditions. With salty roads, there is gravel everywhere, and a lot of customers have gotten rust in the wheel wells and large specks in the paint, and had issues with cracking lights due to washing the cars after all the salt and stuff. And I have not experienced this, but I've seen rust on certain parts of the car that is expected. So the drive shaft have some surface rust, and there are some parts that have started to rust a little bit, but it's just cosmetic and exterior, so there are no structural dangers at all, and I assume that it won't be get that much worse over time. because it doesn't get into the structural components. The door started to squeak a little after approximately 2 years of service, but quickly redeemed with some WD-40, and I didn't hear any squeaks after that. Let's talk a little bit about the ride and comfort. This was among the first criticism of the early Tesla Model 3. The first Model 3 was loud on the highway and had the suspension was surprisingly stiff. The same is true for this one in some regards. The suspension is still quite stiff, but the sound deadening is much better than the early Tesla Model 3. For comparison, I went from an old Lexus hatchback, which was way worse in all regards, sound deadening and ride comfort. So for me, it was a side grade at worst. For me, this car was adequate, and I never thought too much about the ride comfort of the car. It is not a luxurious driving comfort experience in any regard, but it's quiet enough and comfortable enough for me. Again, this is in stark contrast to the pre-2021 models that I had tried myself. Let's talk a little bit about driving feeling. The Model 3 has a great chassis, fantastic driving feeling, and one of the best tuned drivetrains in the world. That's my opinion. I love the Model 3 for spirited driving. Driving in the canyons, we don't have that many canyons in Norway, but in the mountains, and yeah, it feels fantastic on the road. So planted on the road, and I love the drivetrain. It's very fun. The tuning of the drivetrain is just... Oh, the car is fast and planted on the road, extremely fun to drive, and not only in a straight line. And like many say that electric cars, they are only fun in a straight line. This one is fun in a straight line and in the curves, which is great. I've already dedicated video to the drivetrain of the Tesla Model 3, so please watch that if you're interested in my thoughts on the drivetrain of the Tesla Model 3. Let's move over to technology. The infotainment is great. It is amazing to me that Tesla can run such an operating system on a terrible old Intel Atom chip, when other automakers have 10 times the compute and so many slowdowns and so much less responsive screen. The Tesla uses something called Qt, C++ Linux stack. The Linux is the operating system, and then they use the framework Qt on top, which is created in-house. They don't purchase the software for their cars, and it has seemed to be a fantastic choice. You can run a super smooth infotainment for the customer, and the apps are great. Everything works fantastic. The sound system blows everyone else in the price class out of the water. It sounds close to perfect for me. I like the sound personally of the car. It is better than much more expensive cars and systems in both quality and immersion. Tesla absolutely nailed the sound system and became one of my favorite features with these cars over the 3 years. That's the sound system. And it's also completely made in-house, this sound system.
Oh, and autopilot is great because it works outside highways. We have practically no highways in Norway, so this car is perfect for me since the system works perfectly fine outside highways. It has some shortcomings, but in general it works better than most other lane assist systems.
Let's talk about service visits, because you always have service visits with a Tesla, right? I've had quite a few more than I would like, actually. Early on I was in for a failed liftgate of the trunk. It was fixed on warranty, so no question asked. It was just a new strut on the rear trunk. Later on I was in for aligning the trunk, as it had shifted a little bit. It was uneven gaps. At the same time I got low pressure pipe cover for the heat pump, because I'm coming back to that. I'm foreshadowing a disaster later on. Okay, then I was in for a chart port error. There were no issues, but I got an error on the charge port. And when I'm going on long trips, I don't want an error on my charge port. So they replaced the charge port harness. This was one of the first Model 3s with a heat pump. Actually, the heat pump had been out for like maybe 10 months before it was produced in this car, but it was still one of the early heat pumps cars. If you remember the failing Tesla heat pumps in the cold, especially in Canada and Norway, yeah, this car was affected. I have a road trip video down to Europe where I show the exact moment my heat pump failed. luckily on a summer road trip. The entire AC line assembly and super manifold was replaced. This was of course completely free of charge, as it should be, and it didn't take that long, but still a disaster because the heat pump is needed to maintain the correct temperature of the battery and myself, of course. When I was in for a tire change, Tesla told me that they would preemptively replace some of the suspension parts, which is a common failure point of the Tesla Model 3. Suspension parts and a new steering wheel. This was way more service visits than I would like. A few of them are me wanting to have everything perfect, for example a small bubble in the steering wheel, but they replaced it no question asked, like they should. And a few major failures like the heat pump that I talked about. I have personally had few problems with Tesla service, but I've heard that other people have, for example, to fight for a loaner car and stuff like that, which sucks. And that applies to Norway as well. So I feel with those people. It shouldn't be like that. You should just get a loaner, regardless. Let's move over to cost of ownership. 1,000 Norwegian kroners, about $100 in wiper fluid, but not much else. But let's jump over to charging, because that's what actually costs money. I have access to home charging, and I recommend that everyone who is thinking about an EV sort out home charging first. I actually do not recommend an EV if you can't charge at home or at work. I've been using around $2,000 a year on charging, but this includes all home charging and supercharging, which I look at the statistics, we are about 50-50 actually, because you use a lot more energy when you are on road trips. So even though you spend less time on road trips, you spend more energy. So 50-50 home and supercharging is pretty common if you do road trips quite often. I drive approximately 30k kilometers a year, so that's a lot of kilometers, especially in Norway. Depreciation. I purchased this car for 470,000 Norwegian kroners, or $43,000 in 2021, and I'm selling it now for 25,900 Norwegian kroners. This presents a depreciation of 40% over 3 years and 80,000 kilometers, or 58,000 miles. While this depreciation is significant, it is below the average for a similar used car in Norway with a comparable mileage. Even with this loss, selling to a reseller, worst case scenario, it will have not made sense to lease this car at all for me. That would be like almost double the loss from my calculations. This does not include the insanely expensive XPEL PPF for $4,000 I put on this car, and the LED bar that will follow the purchase. It is important to note that I'm selling to a reseller because this is a business vehicle. On the private market I would have gotten more money and more stress, and of course selling on the private market, but you would get a little bit more money and therefore less depreciation. Talking about value loss, let's jump over to range loss. Degradation. When I first opened Tessie, which is my Tesla tracker app of choice, I was shocked as it showed me 11% degradation. It is a possible number actually. Up to 15% is something that we could consider normal, or it's not normal, it's actually pretty bad with 15% degradation, but it can be inside the normal if you do a lot of supercharging and stuff like that. So 15% degradation. Luckily, I think Tesla was wrong and had the wrong battery configuration for my Tesla. It assumed this one had a different battery than it has.
If we put in what I assume is the correct usable battery size for this pack, which is 74.8 kilowatt hours, you might have heard that I said that this one had a 75 kilowatt hour pack, but I assume it's closer to 77 kilowatt hours gross capacity of the pack, and that we have a 74.8 kilowatt hours usable. This is I've done some research and I found some Model Ys which were delivered at the same time with this exact same pack, and you can see it lines up here as well for us with the degradation curve with a similar sized battery. So that gives us a degradation of 7.6%, which makes much more sense than the earlier number. So, when this car was new, we had 74.8 kilowatt hours usable batteries, And that would give us a 437 kilometers real world range, assuming the lifetime efficiency of the car of 171 watt-hour per kilometer. If we now take the number of the available energy in the battery now, we get a usable range of 404 kilometers based on the lifetime efficiency of the car. This means that over 3 years and over 80,000 kilometers, we have had a 33 kilometers real world range loss, which makes sense to me.
How fast can we recoup this energy? Let's talk a little bit about charging. With an onboard charger of 11 kilowatts overnight, we can recoup the entire battery in about 7 hours. For example, overnight. This is the preferred way to charge an EV, of course, like I mentioned many times throughout my videos. Supercharging or fast charging, this car is quick enough for most people. Most people will be satisfied with this car. However, it's important to note that Tesla is not the leader in fast charging speeds, and they haven't been for years. The fastest aspect of Tesla charging is the quick plug-in handshake process. While Tesla chargers can reach up to 250 kilowatts when the battery is at low state of charge, the charging speed drops significantly after reaching 60%. This rapid decrease can be frustrating for those like me that jump chargers to get to the destination fast. The redeeming quality of this car is the efficiency, which means that even though charging is not the best in this car, real world kilometers or miles added are pretty high because this car is efficient. We go far per kilowatt hour added, further than almost any other electric car. I'll put in a video here of my charge curve analysis from 0 to 100%.
Okay, let's take a look at the charging curve of this LG battery. We started with 0%, but it shows 1% here because it was very close to 1%. Anyways, here is the charging curve. So from 0 to 100%, like you can see here, we had an average of 80 kilowatts, which is a pretty average speed. It is not very good, it's not terribly bad, but it's not good enough from Tesla, in my opinion, for the year of this car came out in 2021. So we start off with 225 kilowatts. We were actually briefly at over this, but Tessie was not able to capture it because it stayed for so short amount of time at 250 kilowatts that you don't really capture it on this graph, and it doesn't really matter anyways because of the short time. 225, 219, 207. So already at 7% we are under 200 kilowatts, and it's just dropping from there. It still maintains a good average speed up to 50% in my opinion. It's still at over 100 kilowatts at 50%, so this is acceptable if you're charging from 0 to 50%. But then it drops off just further, and after 60% we are at 80 kilowatts and just dropping off so fast, and the top end charging of this battery is so incredibly slow that I never recommend it. Never charge past 80. Preferably you want to charge to around 60% before getting off on your way, or even if you want to move even faster, you just charge to 50% and then get on your way. So this is the charging curve. It says the peak is 225. The peak in reality is closer to 250. 256 kilowatts is the highest I've seen, but it's just for a few seconds before it drops off. The charging curve is not really good on this LG battery. It's much better on the Panasonic one, which was available the same year as this one.
Let's jump over to adventures. Some of the highlights are my Lofoten Europe adventure, which we drove to Lofoten and then down to Europe. I have no videos on that. I have a video where I drove down to Italy with this car, and then I drove down to Europe when the heat pump failed, and then I had another trip to Lofoten, which is also documented on this channel with my dog Pekko, so please check out that. I'll now put in some clips of my different adventures, and you can check out the full videos on my YouTube channel. Let's talk about winter driving with a Tesla, because I'm in a unique position. I'm in Norway. We have pretty cool winters, I would say. I've had a lot of winter driving experience with this car. I even got stuck on a mountain once in a video, so please check out that if you're interested in that. This car is the best winter car in the world. It has all-wheel drive, amazing traction control system, in-motor response, so it responds immediately and then gets you back on the track. It starts right up in the winter. It has an efficient heat pump that reduces range loss in winter. It has the best thermal system ever fit in an electric car. That's my opinion. Nothing else can compare that I've tested. It's just amazing how efficient this heat pump system is. This car doesn't have a resistive heater. It uses the motors to heat up. You need mud flaps, you need good protection on the car, because there is a ton of gravel, salt and schmutz in the winter. If you don't, you will get paint peeling and rust early. This is the downside of all Teslas and really all cars that drive in Norway. It is brutal. If I could pick on something else, I would have said that it has to be lifted a bit, and maybe I should have gone for studded tires, because I did get stuck on that mountain once, but it's not really the fault of the car. I should have bought a Tesla Model Y if I want a taller car, or lift this one. That would be cool. Features that surprised me that I liked. I fell in love with the sound system. I like the ease of driving and how fast it is from dead to full send. You jump in the car, set it in gear and drive. Fastest getaway car ever. Perfect for bank robberies. It has pet mode, one of my favorite features, and something that I need to consider with a new car. I need pet mode. I have a dog, I need pet mode. Why doesn't every EV has that? Or every car? It is insane to me. So, some of my regrets are the black interior. I should have gone for the white one. I didn't spec a tow hook, and you can't add one later in Norway, at least for this generation of the Tesla Model 3. And the stealth PPF, while cool, it is super expensive and you get nothing again when you're selling it. So, let's jump to the conclusion. In conclusion, this car is pretty well built Tesla with okay ride comfort. It has the best EV tech and the best drivetrain tuning in the world. It has an insane sound system, in my opinion. This car has had quality issues that need to be resolved at service center. It is cheap to operate with low prices for charging and no maintenance needed. It is also very efficient. It has depreciated a lot, and all future cars also will. I have learned that Tesla is not the leader in charging technology, and they haven't been for years. It is slower to charge than it should. This car is one of the most efficient cars ever made. It uses no kilowatt hours to move, or close to zero. It is insane. I have taken it on awesome adventures, and I felt that I could take it anywhere. I'm not afraid of taking this car anywhere. It is also one of the only cars available in Europe with pet mode, which I use for my dog every day. I will repeat, it is insane to me that not everyone has pet mode. Why am I selling it then? Well, this is my company vehicle, and I need to move it out of the company, since I am moving to a privately owned vehicle. In my situation, it does not make sense to buy it out. Long story short, I am getting a new vehicle, but I would have kept this one if it made sense for me to buy it out of the company. But in my situation, it actually doesn't. So I would have kept this vehicle because it's fantastic. I love it. So, replacement. What's my replacement? My next vehicle needs to address the shortcomings I experienced with this purchase. I need a tow hook. If I get a Tesla, I need a white interior, and I'm not spending $4,000 or $5,000 on full body PPF, regardless of which vehicle I get. It would also be fun to test something new. I thought about many cars, many configurations. I have tested so many cars, so I have so many thoughts about different vehicles and brands. And to be honest, I've already made my decision. So please subscribe for the full reveal very soon. If you have a guess, put it in the comments, because I have a competition. If you get it right, every spec of the car. So for example, if it's a Volkswagen ID Bus, I want the interior, exterior color, and all the specs. Put it in the comments. If you're right, I'll contact you and I'll mail you some roaming Norway stickers free of charge. I'll choose, let's say 10 random comments that get it right, if 10 people get it right. Anyways, thank you so much for watching this video. It was quite a long one, quite a lot of rambling, but I hope you got a view of how it was to own a Chinese-built Tesla Model 3 for 3 years in some of the toughest road conditions in the world.
Do you store harpoons or other sharp objects in your Tesla? Check the link below. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to see more videos like this and videos that are not like this, you can subscribe to this channel. I see a lot of people that watch my videos that don't subscribe, so please leave any feedback in the comments and I'll try to improve.